I think most of you are going to find out over the next couple weeks on this channel that I really love draft, time in the NFL because I love seeing the next generation of prospects that are coming into the NFL. And I love seeing the new breed of guys who are going to come in and take over the NFL for the future, especially with the quarterback position, because you never know who is going to be the next quarterback to be the next Patrick Mahomes, the next Brady, next Josh Allen, one of those guys in the NFL. You just never know. That's, the greatness of the NFL draft. You never know what's going to happen to any of these players. They could be projected to be one of the worst players in the draft class, and then they could be one of the best players. And then they could be one of the best players projected in the draft class, and then they could be mid or just not good at all. That's the whole point of this being one of the better times of the NFL. It doesn't happen a lot, but we get a lot of prospects touted as generational almost every few years in the NFL draft. This year, it was Caleb Williams, and a couple years ago, it was Trevor Lawrence. Now, we're going to take a look at some of these prospects and how they worked out in the NFL. Guys who were hyped as generational, did they work out? Did they somewhat work out, or did they just fail altogether? In today's video, we're going to take a look at all that. But as always, before every video, if you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe to my channel, tap the bell icon for future football content, and follow me on social medias down below in the description, in Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. You already know what it is. That's all below in the description. And let's jump into this. The first player we're going to discuss is none other than Jamarcus Russell. Now, I'm pretty sure most of you who've been watching football for a while now know who Jamarcus Russell is. As soon as you hear that name, you immediately think of one word: NFL draft bust. Okay, that wasn't one word, but you get it. Russell's final season at LSU, he threw for over 3,000 yards with an outstanding 67.8 completion rating with 28 touchdowns to just 8 interceptions. What exactly made Jamarcus Russell stand out to a lot of scouts during the NFL draft process? Well, Jamarcus Russell was pretty big for a quarterback. He was around 260 pounds, which is, like I said, pretty big for a quarterback, especially back then. However, Jamarcus Russell was not a normal quarterback, like I said, at least when you look at college football back then. This guy was 260 pounds, but he could play like he was pretty much a running back or wide receiver. That's how athletic he was, pretty much as a quarterback being that big. Not to mention, this guy possessed a cannon of an arm. Arm talent similar to guys nowadays like Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, and Patrick Mahomes. For the most part, leading into the 2007 NFL draft, Jamarcus Russell was the unanimous #1 overall pick. Other than Calvin Johnson, nobody else is going to go #1 overall. With Jamarcus Russell having this much hype, what did some of the most known scouts say about him? First, we're going to take a look at what Todd McShay said about Jamarcus Russell. I can't remember being in such awe of a quarterback in my decade of attending combines and pro days. Russell's passing session was the most impressive all pro days I've ever been to. His footwork for being such a big quarterback was surprising. He was nimble in his dropbacks and rolling out and throwing on the run. The ball just explodes out of his hands. Mel Kiper would make one of the boldest statements out of everybody. Jamarcus Russell is immediately going to energize that fan base, that football team, on the practice field, in that locker room. 3 years from now, you could be looking at a guy that's certainly one of the elite top 5 quarterbacks in this league. You're talking about a 2 to 3 year period once he's under center. Look out, because the skill level that he possesses is certainly John Elway-like. Yes, the same John Elway who's won 2 Super Bowls and is also a league MVP. Lane Kiffin, then Raiders head coach, would say this: he's like a video game. There's not a throw he can't make, and there's some he can make that I'm not sure anyone else can make. That's exciting. But how many times does that happen in the game? Making those long throws, maybe twice in 16 games? I know seeing someone do that is a scout's dream, but it doesn't happen much. He seems like very first class, very easy to get along with. No doubt he was a great leader at LSU. That's why everybody wants him now. Gary Kubiak would go on to compare him to Dante Culpepper. Mike Mayock would describe his skill set as absolutely frightening. But obviously, like every quarterback or like every player in the NFL draft, there were a few people that weren't too impressed with Jamarcus Russell in the end, like always. Merrill Hodge would say something that's very intriguing to this day. If you had to choose a quarterback, who would you pick? Jamarcus Russell or Brady Quinn? Both have strengths and glaring weaknesses. It goes down to which guy is the most coachable. I might take Quinn for that reason, but pure skill with a ton of work to do, it would be Russell. If you put a gun in my head, I'll pick Russell, but he comes with a lot of risk. Yeah, that last part, definitely intriguing. However, one thing will go under the radar when it came to Jamarcus Russell leading into the 2007 NFL draft. Matt Millen told Al Davis, Raiders owner, not to draft Jamarcus Russell, and here's why. Now, Matt Millen was nowhere near a good GM during his time with the Detroit Lions. However, he did give some good advice to the Raiders. Unfortunately, they didn't take it. The reason Matt Millen told Al Davis not to draft Jamarcus Russell is because during a team pre-draft meeting, Jamarcus Russell looked very distracted. Here's what Matt Millen said. I kept looking at him and asking questions. He looks at his watch, and I said, "You got someplace you need to be?" And he goes, "Oh, no, sorry." I asked him another question. He looks at his watch, and I said, "You're done. Get out of here." He then said Russell would then go to see then Lions head coach Ron Marinelli, who also ended up kicking him out of his office. He then would call Al Davis and said, "Coach, I don't know what you're thinking, but don't take Jamarcus Russell. Don't take Calvin Johnson, but don't take Jamarcus Russell." Notice how he said, "Don't take Calvin Johnson." In a pick after they took Jamarcus Russell, they took Calvin Johnson. Smart thinking. Really bad, but smart thinking. And we'll go on from there, as yes, the Raiders would obviously end up taking Jamarcus Russell first overall. And we're just going to honestly keep this short. His 2007 season was pretty ideal, at least for a rookie who only started 40 games. His 2008 season was pretty mid for a quarterback who started 15 games. He threw for over 2,000 yards, 13 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. He also had a rushing touchdown as well. But it would be his 2009 season that would immediately put an end to his career. He had an abysmal 3 touchdowns to 11 interception ratio. The records he set were the lowest quarterback rating, the lowest completion percentage, the fewest passing touchdowns, and the fewest passing yards among qualifying quarterbacks in the NFL. To be specific, his completion percentage was a 48.2%. Going into the 2010 offseason, Russell was described as annually and incredibly overweight. However, Chris Iman of the Oakland Tribune would say he had a first good minicamp and looked to be in great shape. Later, Russell would say in an interview, "Today, I'm going to keep going, coming out and compete for the job and work my tail off." However, a couple weeks after this interview, the Raiders would trade for Washington Redskins quarterback Jason Campbell, which meant there was now 5 quarterbacks on the team: Campbell, Russell, Fry, Gronkowski, and Bowler. Even though originally they said that Russell would compete for the starting job, a couple weeks later, Jamarcus Russell would be released from the Raiders. Now, I didn't point this out earlier, but into the first week of the 2007 NFL season, Jamarcus Russell was in a holdout with the Raiders until September 12th, when he signed a 6-year, $68 million contract worth $31.5 million guaranteed. That one contract right there will be the main reason why the NFL set their rule. Not only that, they also set the rule where players cannot sign for more than 5 years unless they wanted a 5th-year option. Russell would never play in the NFL again after this. He had workouts with the Dolphins, he tried to get a workout with the Ravens, but Ozzie Newsome wanted no interest in him, and he tried to get a workout with also the Bears, basically all 32 NFL teams, but none of those teams wanted anything to do with him. It's also said that his drug possession arrest was another main factor into why no teams wanted anything to do with him. One thing that's crazy though, no Oakland Raiders player has worn number 2 player since Jamarcus Russell wore it. Marquette King wore it in the preseason, and ironically enough, he got hurt. Terrell Pryor wanted to wear number 2, however, Hugh Jackson didn't want him wearing number 2 because he didn't want to have him having comparisons to Jamarcus Russell. Russell will no doubt go down as one of the worst quarterbacks of all time, and that means most definitely he's one of the biggest draft busts of all time, no doubt. Second guy we're going to discuss is Alabama running back Trent Richardson. Richardson was a very productive running back at the University of Alabama, despite the fact he was playing behind another future NFL talent in Mark Ingram. That season, he would carry the ball 112 times for over 700 yards and 6 touchdowns, while also having 266 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns. However, the next season, Mark Ingram left for the NFL, and Trent Richardson would finally take over in 2011. That year, he carried the ball 283 times for over 1,679 yards and 21 touchdowns, while also having 29 receptions for 338 yards and 3 touchdowns. That season for Trent Richardson would break multiple records. He would break his own former teammates' rushing yards record, Mark Ingram, with 1,679 yards, and he'd also break the SC record for rushing yards in this season that Shaun Alexander previously held with 21 touchdowns. He would also be one of the 3 finalists for the Heisman Award. However, that award would be won by RG3, but however, Trent Richardson would finish third in the voting. No surprise, after this season, Trent Richardson would declare for the 2012 NFL Draft. Going into the draft, there were already a few red flags around Trent Richardson that you need to take note of before I go any further into this video. In February of 2012, a couple months before the draft, Trent Richardson had a minor surgery on his knee. Due to this, he was not able to participate in the 2012 NFL Combine. Not only would he miss the Combine, but he also skipped workouts at Alabama's Pro Day on March 7th, only a couple weeks before the NFL Draft would take place. However, on March 27th, he held his own pro day. Despite all this though, most people saw Trent Richardson as a perfect prospect for the most part, and he was going to be a future star in the NFL for the most part. Now, a year prior to this, Mark Ingram went through the same thing where he had a really bad knee injury that he wouldn't have surgery on, and yeah, everything was going to be good. However, he still slid down all the way to the 28th pick in the NFL Draft. Luckily for Trent Richardson, he would not suffer that same fate, as in the 2012 NFL Draft, he would be picked 3rd overall by the Cleveland Browns after they traded picks for the Minnesota Vikings ahead of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who were also interested in getting him to get this pick. At the time, Richardson would be the highest running back drafted in the NFL Draft since Reggie Bush in 2006. Obviously, that would be taken a couple years later by Saquon Barkley, who was selected 2nd overall in the 2018 NFL Draft. However, more issues with Trent Richardson's knee would arose once again, as before the NFL regular season in 2012, he would undergo arthroscopic surgery once again on his knee. This was due to remove some cartilage fragments that was in his left knee. As a result of this, he would miss the entire preseason. However, he would be there for the season opener. His first game against the Eagles, he had 19 carries on just 39 yards, but in his defense, he was limited in that game. However, he would improve in his second game against the Bengals when he rushed over 109 yards on 19 carries. He also had 4 receptions and 36 yards with a receiving touchdown. In total though, Richardson rushed over 900 yards in 15 games with 11 touchdowns, over 300 yards receiving and 1 touchdown. He also break legendary Browns running back Jim Brown's rookie record with 9 touchdowns. However, during the 2013 season, a shocking move would happen for the Browns, as Richardson would be traded to the Indianapolis Colts for a 1st round pick in 2014. So some of you might be asking yourselves, Trent Richardson had a pretty good rookie year, so why did the Browns abruptly decide to trade him? Well, I wanted to find some answers myself, and I would find it on a Reddit page, and one person that basically went in depth as to why he traded Trent Richardson was former Browns GM Mike Lombardi. Now, I want to point out that same rookie year, Trent Richardson had 3.6 yards a carry, which for a running back is pretty god-awful for the most part. And Michael Lombardi was basically looking at this guy on film, and he basically said, yeah, this guy's not good at all. This guy's pretty much a fraud in my books. So that is why he had no problem trading him to the Indianapolis Colts. And he somehow managed to snag a 1st rounder for this guy, despite the fact at the time he was not really worth a 1st round pick. But the Colts took that gamble. Richardson would struggle early on with the Colts, even at one point getting demoted. However, he would eventually get his starting role back. But that was only because Donald Brown got hurt, and that is how he got his starting job back. In his first career playoff start against the Kansas City Chiefs, he would fumble in that game. In his first year with the Colts, carried the ball for over 400 yards, 3 touchdowns, 265 receiving yards, and 1 touchdown. The next season, once again, Trent Richardson was once again playing behind another running back. This time, he was playing behind former Giants running back Ahmed Bradshaw. But like last year, he would once again get his starting role back due to another injury. However, after a few measly performances with the Jaguars and the Washington Redskins, he would once again lose his starting job, but this time to Dan Henderson. Richardson would be a healthy scratch for the final 2 games of the Colts playoff run in 2013. He was then suspended for the AFC Championship game after he missed a walkthrough. However, according to Richardson, this was a family emergency. However, Richardson did not let the team know that this was the case. Finally, on March 12, 2015, the Colts would waive Trent Richardson. Richardson would then sign a 2-year deal with the Raiders. However, that wouldn't last long, as only a couple months later, he would be released by the team. However, the next year after this, he signed with the Baltimore Ravens. However, once again, a couple months later, he was released. He would then play for the Canadian Football League, the Saskatchewan Rough Riders, if I said that right. He had a few decent games in Canadian Football League, not really too much anything, exciting, but he was decent, I would say. Rough Riders head coach Chris Jones reported that Trent Richardson would not be reported to the Saskatchewan Rough Raiders for the 2018 season, and this will be revealed due to the fact that Trent Richardson got into some legal trouble. Basically, if he crossed the Canadian border, he will lose custody of his kids. So in the end, and due to this, he was not able to play in the CFL, effectively ending his career there. And eventually on August 15, 2018, he would obviously be released from the team. Now, Trent Richardson would then move to the AAF Alliance American Football League, and he had a pretty good year that year, having 12 touchdowns on the ground. However, the league ceased operations on April 17, 2019, once again leaving Richardson without a job. Richardson will last play in the Mexican Football League, and for the most part, there's not really any stats there that I know about, and for the most part, he was playing on limited time as far as I know. So in the end, why did Trent Richardson's career kind of spill out? Well, it's pretty simple. A mix of injuries and the fact that most people saw him as a very overrated player once he got in the NFL were kind of the biggest downfalls he had for the most part. Constant knee injuries and the fact that after those knee injuries, he was not the same player he once was had a huge effect on Trent Richardson's career for the most part. And while we hate to admit it, Richardson is kind of one of the catalysts for the reasons you shouldn't draft a running back high in the NFL draft. Like I said, we hate to say it, but it's unfortunately true. Richardson unfortunately will go down as one of the biggest NFL draft busts of all time. The next player we're going to discuss is Jadeveon Clowney, and for the most part, this is a more positive story than the last two guys we just discussed. Jadeveon Clowney leading into the 2014 NFL draft was called a once-in-a-lifetime generational talent. He had some productive years at the University of South Carolina, especially in 2012 when he put up 54 tackles, 13 sacks, and also 3 forced fumbles. But we all know he was known for that absolutely devastating hit against Michigan in that Outback Bowl. Good Lord, I remember watching that and thinking, ooh, yeah, he's dead. Well, how generational was Jadeveon Clowney? This guy was compared to Julius Peppers, who is going to be a Hall of Famer in 2024. So already that's a bold comparison when you think about it. For the most part, everybody had Jadeveon Clowney going in the top 5 of the NFL draft, and most people had him going to the Texans, who, despite the fact they were 2-14 and they needed a quarterback, they had Clowney going first overall to that team, and that is exactly what happened in the 2014 NFL draft. Now, for the most part, Clowney's NFL career was off to a pretty good start. In one of his first 2 preseason games, he got a sack on Matt Ryan. However, before his third preseason game against the Broncos, he would suffer a concussion in practice after colliding with his teammates, which would cause him to miss the rest of the preseason. He make his regular season debut against the Washington Redskins, where in that game he had 1 tackle for a loss. However, in the second quarter, he left due to a knee injury, and it was revealed later on that this was a torn meniscus, and Jadeveon Clowney would have missed the rest of the season. In his second year, he would play in 13 games, starting 9 of them, where he had 40 tackles, 4.5 sacks, and 6 passes defended. Clowney would make his first Pro Bowl in 2016 after he finished the season with 52 tackles, 6 sacks, and 1 forced fumble. He was then named to his second Pro Bowl in 2017 after he had 59 tackles, 9.5 sacks, and 2 forced fumbles. He would follow up in 2018 with another season with 9 sacks, 47 tackles, and another 1 forced fumble. However, after the 2018 season, a big change for Clowney would take place as he was traded to the Seattle Seahawks in exchange for Jacob Martin, Berquavius Mingo, and a 3rd-round pick in the 2020 NFL Draft. This was due to the fact that Jadeveon Clowney was placed on a franchise tag for the Texans. However, Clowney had no desire to play on a franchise tag and wanted an extension with the team. The Texans, on the other hand, looks like they had no interest in an extension, so they would trade him to the Seahawks instead. He would wound up playing 13 games for the Seattle Seahawks, where in those games he had 31 tackles, 3 sacks, and 4 forced fumbles. In the wildcard game against the Eagles, Clowney would deliver a huge helmet-to-helmet hit on Carson Wentz, which would end him knocking him out of the game. The Seahawks would still win that game, however, Clowney was fined shortly after this for that hit. During the 2020 offseason, Clowney would sign a 1-year deal worth $12 million with the Tennessee Titans. However, that wouldn't last long, as only a month later, he would suffer a knee injury that would put him out for the rest of the season. Clowney would only play in 8 games for the Tennessee Titans, having 0 sacks, 19 tackles, but he did have a forced fumble. He would then sign with the Cleveland Browns in 2021, where in that first year, he had 37 tackles, 9 sacks, and 2 forced fumbles. For the most part, pairing him up with Myles Garrett was a huge plus for that Browns defensive line. However, the next year, his stats would dip dramatically as he had 14 tackles, 2 sacks, and only 1 forced fumble. Then some trouble started rumbling around the Browns for Jadeveon Clowney. He made some comments about the Browns, and after this, he was sent home. And then on March 15, 2023, he would be released by the Cleveland Browns. And then on August 18, 2023, he would sign a 1-year deal with the Baltimore Ravens, where there he had a pretty good season. He played in all 17 games for the Baltimore Ravens, tallying 43 tackles, 9.5 sacks, and 2 forced fumbles. He also got a huge, big $750K bonus from the Baltimore Ravens after reaching 9.5 sacks against the Steelers in the last game of the regular season. While Clowney has not had that generation type output that a lot of people thought he would have coming in 2014, he has something that a lot of these other guys on this list aren't going to have. He's been productive in his NFL career. You have guys like Jamarcus Russell and Trent Richardson who only had maybe one good productive year. And when I say that, I'm mostly talking about Trent Richardson, but that's pretty much it. Clowney had productive years with the Texans, the Browns, and now the Baltimore Ravens. So while he might never reach that level that he once had the potential to have in 2014, he is going to always be a productive pass rusher for any team he plays for. And that's pretty much all you need to have nowadays. Just be a very productive player. And like I said, the rest of these guys, especially the two I just named, they have been productive. Clowney, though, he has, and really, he's still making money. He is still produced for NFL teams, and like I said before, that's all that matters. Clowney, just keep doing your thing, I guess. We're now going to take a look at Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck is one of those other players who doesn't need a lot of introductions. Andrew Luck was a very good quarterback for the most part of his NFL career. However, he dealt with a number of injuries that would halt his career for the most part. But I'm going too far ahead. Why exactly was Andrew Luck labeled generational going into the 2012 NFL draft? Now, for most people, there was a toss-up between who was going to be the better quarterback in this draft, RG3 or Andrew Luck. But consensus-wise, most people thought it was Andrew Luck. At 6'4", 234 pounds, Andrew Luck was an outstanding athlete with outstanding upside. While his arm strength was not going to stand out to you as amazing for the most part, this guy could make any throw you ask him to make for the most part. Essentially, what I'm trying to say is Andrew Luck was described as one of the most safest quarterback prospects you could ever find in an NFL draft, basically. Ironically enough, he was compared to another generational prospect that played for the same team that would end up drafting him. Obviously, I'm talking about Peyton Manning. Luck's rookie year was pretty okay for the most part. He played in all 16 games, finishing with an 11-5 record, passed for 4,000 yards, 28 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. He also had 255 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns on the ground. He led the Colts to the playoffs, however, they would get knocked out by the Baltimore Ravens. From 2013 to 2014, Luck would pretty much play in every game for the Indianapolis Colts. And in 2014, he had his best year as a starter, passed for over 4,000 yards, 40 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions, while also rushed for 273 yards and 3 touchdowns. However, in 2015, things would start to fall apart for Andrew Luck. Not only did Andrew Luck deal with a shoulder injury, but he also dealt with a lacerated kidney and also a partially torn abdominal muscle. Despite how bad this injury sounds, it looked like at one point that Andrew Luck was going to be able to return for the regular season. However, that would not be the case and he would miss the rest of the season. Luck would play in all but one game in 2016 and finished with an 8-7 record as he threw for 4,000 yards, 31 touchdowns, and 13 interceptions. After that season, Andrew Luck would undergo a surgery on his right throwing shoulder, the same shoulder that was giving him problems since 2015. Andrew Luck was initially expected to return for the 2017 season. However, the shoulder was not fully recovered enough and Andrew Luck would miss the entire 2017 season for the Colts. However, he would return in 2018 for the Colts, once again playing in all 16 games, finishing with a 10-6 record, passed for 4,000 yards, 39 touchdowns, and 15 interceptions, leading him to win Comeback Player of the Year that same year. Then on August 24th, 2019, this would be a day that goes down in Colts history for the most part. After losing to the preseason against the Bears 27-17 and being at an 0-3 record, the Colts had just walked off the field and Andrew Luck was receiving boos from the entire crowd. Now, what I don't understand, Why was Andrew Luck receiving boos? This guy had just had a great season where he won Comeback Player of the Year and led your team to the playoffs, but he was still receiving boos. Little did Colts fans know, that will be the last time Andrew Luck walked off the field as an NFL player, as shortly after this, that same day, Andrew Luck announced his retirement from the NFL. During the course of his NFL career, Andrew Luck dealt with numerous injuries, and he also said the effects of the NFL took a toll on his marriage, and in the end, he basically chose marriage over the NFL. He would even be quoted saying this, "I've been stuck in this process. I haven't been able to live the life I want to live. It's taking the joy out of this game. The only way to move forward is to remove myself from football. This is not an easy decision. It's the hardest decision of my life, but it's the right decision for me." Andrew Luck was only 29 when he retired from the Colts. And to this day, he is still considered one of the few younger players that retired way too young, along with guys like Patrick Willis. At one point, there is a rumor that Andrew Luck was returning to the NFL and that the Washington Redskins were trying to give him the return. However, Andrew Luck has previously stated that he has no interest in returning to the NFL and he is happily retired. Jim Irsay would even come out and publicly accuse the Washington Redskins of tampering. Andrew Luck is going to go down as one of the biggest what ifs in football history, and I'd have to imagine if this guy didn't retire early, he would have been a bona fide Hall of Famer to this point. Patrick Peterson is going to be the next player we take a look at. Peterson to this day is regarded as one of the best defensive backs of his era, so that alone should tell you the impact he had on his team or football in general. This is how impactful he was in 2010. He won the Jim Thorpe Award, he won the Chuck Bednarik Award in 2010, the Jack Tatum Award in 2010. He was a unanimous All-American in 2010. He was a second-team All-American in 2009. He was a first-team All-SEC in 2010. And he was second-team All-SEC in 2009. Yes, this guy was an absolute stud during his whole career at LSU. Peterson was described as nothing short of an elite prospect going into the 2011 NFL Draft. And eventually the Cardinals thought so too, because he would be selected 5th overall in that same draft by the Arizona Cardinals. And I'm not gonna lie to you, we're gonna keep this short for Peterson. He was a 3-time first-team All-Pro in 2011, 2013, and 2015. And he made the Pro Bowl 8 times from 2011 to 2018 as well. He also was a part of the NFL All-Decades team in 2010. He enjoyed a long career with the Cardinals, had a short stint with the Minnesota Vikings, and also had a stint with the Pittsburgh Steelers. In the end with Peterson, he probably is the only guy on this list right now who has a sure shot at making the Hall of Fame. I think Andrew Luck had a chance if he didn't retire, as I said before, but in all likelihood, that's probably not going to happen. Peterson will no doubt go down as one of the best DBs of the 2010s. One more guy I want to discuss, and I honestly would have felt wrong if I didn't discuss him, Megatron Calvin Johnson. I'm pretty sure when you hear this name, you don't need a lot of introduction with this guy, but I will briefly discuss Calvin Johnson real quick. Calvin Johnson was not just called Megatron for no reason whatsoever. He earned that name. Calvin Johnson was the type of receiver, whether he was in triple coverage, double coverage, it didn't matter. Matthew Stafford specifically was going to find a way to get him the ball. It didn't matter what type of coverage this guy was in. Basically, what Calvin Johnson would do is look at these type of coverage and say, "Oh, this ain't nothing." Run his route, go up, and catch the ball for a touchdown. That's how nasty Calvin Johnson was. The Lions GM at the time, Matt Millen, would do the nastiest thing to get him. Not only did he tell Al Davis not to draft Jamarcus Russell, but he also told them not to draft Calvin Johnson. And for the most part, they drafted Jamarcus Russell, but obviously they didn't draft Calvin Johnson, and he would fall right into the Lions' hands. CJ does not need a lot of introduction. He was a 3-time first-team All-Pro during his NFL career, a second-team All-Pro, and a 6-time Pro Bowler, and he led the NFL twice in receiving yards, and he also led the NFL in receptions in 2012. He was also part of the NFL All-Decades team, and in the end, in 2021, he was inducted into the NFL Hall of Fame. But in 2018, he was also inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame. Here are some of the records that Calvin Johnson ended up setting in the NFL. the most receiving yards in a single season with 1,964 receiving yards, the most seasons with 1,600 receiving yards with 2, the most consecutive games with at least 100 receiving yards with 8, the most consecutive games with 10 receptions with 4, the most receiving yards, 100 receiving yard games in a single season with 11, the most receiving yards in a 5-game span with 861, the most receiving yards in a 6-game span with 962, and the most receiving yards in a single game in regulation with 329 against the Cowboys. He also holds pretty much every Lions record there is for a receiver at this point as well. Calvin Johnson was a stud. He's going to go down as one of the best receivers of all time, no doubt, and he deserved his Hall of Fame spot without a doubt. And generational, yeah, this guy's above generational. This guy's an all-time classic. But that is going to do it for this video. I'm sure there's a number of planned WrestleMania matches that never happened. So if you want me to do a deeper dive into more matches that didn't happen, you can let me know in the comments down below. But if you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe to my channel and tap the bell icon for future wrestling content. And also follow me on social medias down below in the description. Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, all of that is down below in the description. And I will see you guys in the next video. Peace out.